Welcome to the Healing Revolution podcast, where I challenge the status quo of conventional medicine and bring hope to those seeking a more natural path to health. I'm your host, Nicole Finn, functional nutrition counselor, nutritional kinesiology practitioner, and co owner of Aspire Health and Nutrition here in Southeast Massachusetts, home to our natural health store and holistic clinic. We'll be diving into the power of personalized nutritional therapy programs, lifestyle adjustments, targeted supplementation, and a systems over symptoms approach to healing. This podcast is here to inspire you, educate you, and remind you that there is another way, because true healing doesn't come from covering symptoms, it comes from rebuilding the foundation. Welcome back to the Healing Revolution podcast. Joining me today is Kayla Peachey, someone very special to our Aspire family. She first came to me as a client searching for answers in her own health journey, and what started as personal healing has grown into a calling. Now, as our intern here at Aspire and a future holistic practitioner, Kayla is passionate about the mind-body connection and helping others restore balance through nutrition and functional approaches to wellness. Welcome, Kayla.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you here. We've been talking about this for months now.
I know we've been trying to book something on the calendar for months and it's just been way too long.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you're here. So take us back to the beginning, sort of what originally brought you into Aspire and what were you struggling with at that time?
So prior to me coming to Aspire, I was having severe issues with my skin. I was having like chronic inflammation and cystic acne all over my face. I was dealing with gastrointestinal issues, digestion issues, like bloating, constipation, things of that nature. And I basically was given no answers by like Western medicine practitioners. My dermatologist didn't really know what was going on. When I went to my physicals, everything was all set. No blood work looked weird. So I was kind of just left with no answers. And I knew that something was off and there was some answer out there, but the Western medical community was not giving me that.
Did they
So
give you
that's
any sort of recommendations?
Besides like the top 10 Google searches of just drink more water, lower your stress, maybe try exercising more, even though I have always been like an athlete throughout my life and I played like, school sports growing up and I've always been active. I've always ate like a pretty healthy diet, but I just knew that something was missing
Mhm.
and there was clearly an imbalance somewhere in there. I just didn't know where to even start to break that down.
Yeah, no, and I think too, with modern medicine, as I mean, you and I talk about this all the time off camera, but they sort of isolate issues. So you go to the dermatologist for your skin, but they would have never found what you and I have found through muscle testing and through like in-depth, non-invasive analysis, where it was, I think it might have been your gallbladder that had come up your first
Mhm.
visit. And once we sort of made some dietary tweaks and supported that area, I think you came to me 3 weeks later before we kind of restructured our whole program of care, and you looked so different, like both in how you
Yeah.
kind of presented, but also your skin was clearing up. And I was like, "Are you sure there's nothing else to report?" You're like, "Nope, everything's good."
Nope. Everything was great. I feel like also too what a lot of people don't talk about in like the Western community is just how much like food also impacted not only like my physical symptoms of like the acne and like the bloating went away and like everything gastrointestinally was working smoothly.
Yep.
But yeah, they just don't connect the gut with the skin, which was the direct cause of why I was having the acne, and also indirectly why I was constantly anxious all the time
Yep.
because I was constantly eating too much sugar in my diet, even though we're taught that there's healthy carbs, but my diet was still too carb focused, which is what Nicole kind of educated me on and about how grains cause gallbladder pains
Yeah, that's
and
our
how
mantra around here.
everything, yes, that's our mantra, and how everything like loops back to the gut. And the gut bacteria was basically coming out through my skin, which is kind of gnarly to think about, but
Yeah, it's all connected. We're one big machine. So it's just interesting. Your journey, I feel like because you took the recommendations, you were really consistent. You noticed results, I would say in what, like a month or so?
yeah, definitely. I would say like after the first 2 weeks, First 2 weeks were probably the most challenging for me just to like start organizing and putting in all those dietary habits because I kind of just like jumped into it full force because I was just sick of constantly not knowing what to do and feeling like crap all the time and having painful breakouts on my skin. So I was just totally ready to jump right in and commit to
Yeah.
it. But definitely after the 2 week mark, the inflammation, like physically in my face, was so much better than it was prior.
Yeah. And that's honestly everybody that comes in here that you share that story with, they look at you, they're like, you had bad acne? You can't even
I
tell.
know everybody's like, oh my God, like I can't believe it. And I was like, yeah, it's pretty much like within 3 months, it was gone after having it for years upon years and it only getting worse.
Yeah.
So every single year I would go back to the dermatologist and they would just add another cream, pill, or potion to the list of what I was taking.
Yep. And it wasn't healing what was going on the inside. So it's just sort of trying to manage or mask what was going on the outside. I also like that you mentioned that it took about 3 months because I feel like that's a conversation you hear me have with a lot of clients, is that
Hmm.
3 months is roughly one healing cycle. So you have to give yourself a good 3 months of consistency to really be able to move the needle in your health. And if you backtrack and you fall back into some of your bad habits, you never really start that full healing cycle. So I like that you mentioned that it's 3 months that you really noticed a full turnaround because that's really how it works, is that right on that third month, most people start to notice that huge shift. Like they start to wake up feeling clearer. I think within a few days, people start to notice less stress on their bodies. They might have more energy, they might feel lighter, but as they continue with that consistency, they say the same thing. They're like, by that third month, I really felt a shift.
Yeah, I know our nervous system is it's so funny. Like how it's just like so timed and so like rooted in everything.
Mhm.
And I feel like that also like too like the 90-day thing also reminds me of the different clocks with the different like organ systems and how some are more present at other times, like the liver can be at like 3 a.m. And
Yeah.
I did notice after you had mentioned that to me on one of the first appointments that I was noticing I was waking up at certain times. And I had purchased a book to read about all of that. And just all the connections that Nicole was telling me with the organs were like 100% spot on.
Yeah, traditional Chinese medicine has been around for over 6,000 years or something crazy, probably longer. But
Yeah.
so nothing that you and I do here is new. It's been around for a lot longer than modern medicine. So we haven't developed anything. We have systems in place that really position people to thrive. And you are one of those people, which is really cool.
Yes, I
So
know. This
what,
totally changed my whole perspective with everything.
yeah, what stood out to you most about the process and once you started your program of care?
So what stood out to me the most was how in-depth the consultation was. Like Nicole sent me this whole several different documents just asking me all different questions about like my health history, but it was just so much more in depth, or like my day-to-day activities, what I'm eating and stuff like that, which is so much more in depth from the 10 to 15 minute conversation that you have with your physician every 6 months to a year. So I feel like that was definitely cool to see because it made me feel seen and feel like she was actually taking everything into account and not just, how I'm sleeping or what medications I'm on and my family history, and then just jumping right to the next thing and totally ignoring everything else about the diet and other life factors.
Yeah, that's huge. I think that's a lot. That's what a lot of people miss. I think not only in modern medicine, but even in holistic medicine, is they miss that critical point which is the evaluation. Because as you know, every case is so different. And so when you don't evaluate people thoroughly and you start just recommending things based on the symptoms that they present with, you really aren't any better than a medical doctor because you're just treating their symptoms, albeit natural. You're still not necessarily correcting the function of the body and kind of correcting those underlying causes that might be causing dysfunction. Um, so that's awesome. It's
Yeah, I also liked how you mentioned that like symptoms aren't like a one size fits all. Like people may present the same symptoms, but like you said, like the causes and the roots to everybody are going to be totally different of like what organs light up when we test them, muscle test them.
They're so universal. Like I think you might have been the one that mentioned this to me that, symptoms are all universal. So I could have three people walk into the clinic and they all have bloating, gas, indigestion, constipation, maybe they have cystic acne, hormonal imbalances, and yeah, like you said, the different things that light up are going to be totally different. We've seen that actually recently where, somebody will have those symptoms and they present and we test for pathology and something comes up, whether it's yeast, parasite, or virus. And then, other times it could be the liver, it could be the small intestine. Everybody's so different. So even though they're presenting with the same symptoms, they all have different programs.
Yeah, and exactly. And I feel like that's like why muscle testing is like just such a great tool that we use in the clinic
Mhm.
to help like as a diagnostic tool to get people on the supplements that they need for their body. And it's a total individual customization because nobody has ever lit up on the test the same. And I feel like people often think that like, certain names of certain supplements are going to come up, but it actually is, we've gotten some cool combinations.
Yeah.
Like I think we had a client one time that had like a brain and body come up for like a liver, which was kind of cool to see how the body kind of like is all deeply connected and everything balances each other out.
Yeah, it's like the ebb and flow.
Yes.
So besides noticing your skin clearing relatively fast, what were some of the other big changes that you noticed as your body started to heal?
I definitely noticed, like overall, like my energy was up and my anxiety was down, which is what I had noticed the most of. As soon as I had like eliminated the grains out of my diet and just started eating more like healthy vegetable carbs, like sweet potatoes and loading up more veggies and things like that, I totally noticed like my mind clarity was just so clear and everything just kind of started to balance itself out. And I felt like I could actually lower my stress for the
Yeah.
first time as somebody who I feel like was never relaxed prior.
Mhm.
And it was totally because of the food that I was eating. And I thought that this so-called healthy food or how it was advertising was actually I was eating the right things when actually I was eating all the wrong things.
Hmm. Yeah, that's huge. We've been so misinformed, and there's so many trends out there that tell you how to eat, and then you realize, actually, this isn't really working for me. So it
Yeah.
kind of cheapens that sort of clinical aspect that holistic medicine can really hold for people. But I actually noticed that in you too, because I remember at our first visit, I remember had mentioned that you really struggle with anxiety, and you see, like, you could just see it on your face. You just were so stressed out. There was so much going on for you, and also college is not like the most
Yeah,
peaceful
college is not the
experience,
best.
exactly. It doesn't really give you a good peaceful environment. I mean, sometimes I guess depending on what you're doing.
Yeah.
But I remember that, and I was at your second visit where I was like, she seems different. You seemed a lot calmer, a lot more clear. It was cool to see your transformation.
Yeah, that was definitely like one of the things that mainly stuck out to me. And I feel like I didn't necessarily notice it quite as like fast as I saw like the physical changes, but I felt like over time I would just have things happen to me throughout my day. Like, for example, like a gallon of milk fell out of the fridge when I opened the door and it like spilled everywhere. And previously that would have ruined like my whole entire day. And I would have let that set the tone for my day.
Mhm.
But, after like really cutting out the grains and eating clean and following the diet, I felt like over time I just kind of noticed myself reacting differently to things and just being like, oh, okay, well, you know, we can
Yeah,
get through this and just having that like better inner voice to just be like, just breathe and stay calm and we'll clean it up and we'll keep going. We'll keep
right.
rolling.
Most people don't learn that too until way later in life, so it's huge that you
Yeah.
learned that so early. What other, let me try and think of how I want to ask this. How long were you dealing with a lot of these symptoms before you came to see me?
Um, Years, honestly,
Really?
years upon years. I think I remember first having like the gastrointestinal issues like when I was like in my early teenage years. I
Mhm.
remember going to like the fair with my friends and they all got like fried dough and slushies and lemonades and all those like fun drinks and gross carnival snacks.
Yep.
And I had like some of my friends' fried dough, and I just remember feeling so sick when I got home, and I was just like, how can you guys even eat that? Like, and I only had a few bites, and I was just immediately so bloated, nauseous,
Mm.
just felt gross inside and out.
Wow.
And as for my chronic acne, I definitely started getting acne probably my mid-teenage years. So probably shortly after that, is when like the acne really started to flare up.
Wow. You've come a long way. Your
Yeah,
skin looks so good.
thank you.
You're glowing.
Yes, glowing with all these natural remedies.
Yeah, and it's again natural, non-invasive. There's no side
Mhm.
effects. I feel like we can't tell people that enough. So, at what point, I think I had talked to you about this, probably with your mom in one of your like the first or second visit. That I remember you saying that what you wanted to be, I think, a physical therapist, because I asked you what you wanted to do because you were in a similar field at Bridgewater State,
Yes.
which I studied health studies, and you're a health science major, so it's kind of like the
Mhm.
sister programs.
Yes.
So at what point did you realize you really wanted to go deeper and actually become a practitioner yourself?
Well, I feel like prior to this, my mom had lived in Germany for a certain portion of her life, and they do a lot of like more holistic remedies over there. So growing up, she did use all like the holistic little tablets and stuff like that for me that were like all the plant herbal remedies and like all the teas, and they always worked really well for me growing up. But I feel like being in college, one of the things that I guess was kind of pushed, the narrative was always like Western medicine has more job security and that like it's always going to be rotating and they're always going to need more people and that it was the way to go and it was just the only way to get one of the only ways to get a secure job. When I feel like that just wasn't true. I feel like a lot of people weren't educated at all in the college when I had questions about like natural medicine and things, and a lot of people hadn't even heard about it. So I feel like it has a lot to do with like the exposure about it. I've always been interested in it, but I just never thought prior to coming to Nicole's that I could even get a job as a natural healer or anything of that nature because I would have never survived if I had opened my own business or tried to start a practice because nobody would be interested in it because Western medicine was far more reliable based off of just the research alone about it. But what they don't tell you is that research is also funded by big pharma and things like that, which is why there is less research around holistic stuff. But doesn't mean that it does not exist because there is still plenty of research on different holistic things.
There may not be necessarily clinical trials, which there are as far as in the last
Hmm.
100 years, but there is definitely documented reports that date back thousands of years on holistic
Yes.
medicine, which is really fascinating. Like for those listening, for example, echinacea, which is an herb that we use
Mhm.
a lot in our practice, used to be used during Native American times for things like sepsis. So it's a really potent natural antibiotic. So yeah, no, that's actually a really good point because I think with modern medicine, they have all of the clout, but none of the
Mhm.
credibility. So that all of they shine in emergency rooms. They are fantastic when it comes to life or death situations. So that's where all of their clout comes from because they're known for saving lives. But where they lose all their credibility is when they try to match a pill with for every ill. So people that
Mhm.
go to their doctor, like you, who had chronic digestive distress and acne for longer than, I don't know, 1 to 2 years,
Mhm.
you know, they just want to prescribe you a medication and or a topical and send you on your way, and it doesn't work for you. So you go back and you're like, "Hey, I still don't feel great. My skin's still a mess," and they don't have answers for you. So they lose all their credibility in the areas that they don't put enough time in. And I think part of it is because, and I know I'm just going to say it, you and I
Mhm.
talk about this, a healed customer is a lost customer. So they don't want
Yes.
us
Yeah.
to necessarily get well because then they don't get to feed their wallets. And I think we make that very transparent, at least in our clinic, that we want people to get well because we don't
Mhm.
want to have clients for life. Maintenance clients are great because that means they've already gotten well. They're just trying to maintain their wellness. And that's really what you and I we test each other every 2 or 3 weeks for
Mhm.
that reason because practitioners are the ones to not take care of themselves because they're too busy taking care of everybody else.
Yep. And I feel like also like even just the demand of When I was looking into PT schools and previously to looking into being a physical therapist, I was looking into being a physician's assistant. But even just looking at how like the medical field is structured and how they really just push that just jump from one patient to the next and just focus more on the numbers rather than the results just made me like super uncomfortable. I feel like morally the more I learned about these careers that I thought I wanted to go into and like how they were structured and how my day to day would be structured with my clients, I just felt really uncomfortable with that. I don't like how they like rush clients in and out and they rush doctors, which is why so many people, thousands of people, die or are hurt per year for a medical malpractice because big pharma and all these like Western medicine communities and businesses really
Mhm.
are pushing this narrative to just focus on the profits rather than focus on the health of the person.
100%. And it's funny that you they do rush people in and out of visits, but they're
Mhm.
still always late. It's crazy.
Yes.
They're like an
Yep.
hour, hour and a half you're waiting and your appointment was at 9 a.m. and you don't get walk in until 10:45 and you're like, "Hello."
Right. But even after you waited a half hour, you can't even be seen for more than 15 minutes.
Yeah. So it's really what are they doing? It doesn't make any sense. Yeah, no, it's definitely crazy. And since for those listening, Kayla, for those that are maybe a client of ours, has been interning and sitting in on a lot of my appointments and taking my notes for me, which has been so helpful. You know that we have been restructuring our program of care not only to help, increase client results, but also to help with our structure. So that way people have a great experience walking in, but it also improves our experience working here.
Mhm.
So we've been restructuring that. We're still in the process. So we have a lot to iron out as far as front office stuff. Um, as you know, we're still working on it, but we're getting there. And it's still so much better having really good systems in place. I think I talked about this with Dan on the last podcast, that having systems in place improves not only your client experience, but also your experience as a practitioner, so that all you have to do is show up, do your job, and do it well. When practices don't have really good systems, there's a lot of chaos and stress, and then there starts to be, employee turnover. There's a lot of mismatched employees, so people that don't really get along with each other. And yeah. So we're really working on that now. And you and I have talked about growing and as far as eventually you taking clients here at Aspire, and then bringing on another team member so that we can really reach the community and help as many people as possible.
hmm And I also really liked how you mentioned about how like the systems are the ones that really drive our practice because I feel like it's so important that you don't need to give up efficiency in order to produce like good results in clients. So that's what really we're working with Dan Young on right now to really restructure the practice and go with more of his systems and use that to drive our clientele in and get them the results that they need in an efficient time. And what makes us different from Western medicine is that we're never late,
Hmm. Yeah, ever.
ever.
Ever I'm like thinking like, am I? No, we're really on time. And I think part of it is, to have a really good practice is you need to be effective and you need to be efficient. And I think some people they have one or the other. So they're really efficient, like modern medicine, they're very efficient. They can save lives like that. They just hop off the ambulance and they're throwing them in surgery rooms and they're getting people better. I mean, they're keeping them alive. But as far as effective, what does that long-term care look like? And so that's really where holistic medicine stands in the gap. And our goal here, and I think the main thing as far as your journey to note, which I think is cool, is the reason why it's now October and you're feeling better than you ever have, and your digestive system has not produced any more symptoms for you, and your skin looks great, is
Mhm.
because we've corrected the dysfunction.
Yes.
We've
And
corrected
I
those
feel like
underlying causes, whereas, had you not corrected that, you would maybe have felt good for maybe 3 months and then it would start to come back. But because you stayed consistent for the last, I think I saw you in January or February. So what is that?
yeah,
Eight,
January, so it's been like 10
10 months.
months.
Yeah. So because you stayed consistent, now you can produce those long-term results. And so that way you'll, age gracefully and not have any issues.
Exactly. And I feel like that's like so important that where the Western medical community falls short is the prevention. We don't want people to have to be ill in order to get better. It's better if we get it while it's, early, and so then we can recorrect it with natural supplements that are not only less side effects and they're much gentler on the body so that we can correct those issues going forward to prevent various diseases and other autoimmune issues.
100%. 100%. So now that you're interning here at Aspire, what excites you most about being part of our mission, and what do you hope to bring to our clients in the future?
I feel like what always is like my biggest thing that I'm passionate about is having people see results. Because I feel like just a lot of people in the community, and unfortunately, because of the American education system, we kind of fall short when it comes to education about nutrition and how eating and what you eat 3 times a day does 10 times more for the results of your health rather than taking a pill, a little tiny pill once or twice a day. What you are putting into your body, like into your machine, is directly what you're going to get out.
Mhm.
And I feel like one of the best parts about Aspire is kind of talking with our clients and really educate them and make them feel motivated and that they have control over their health and that they're kind of like almost relearning the lies that they once believed about food.
Oh my gosh, yeah, we've been so indoctrinated. A big piece of what we do here, as you know, because you hear me say the same thing every appointment, is the education. Because if people don't know why they're doing what they're doing or what we're recommending, they're not going to follow through with it. Some of them do, but most people want to know why because they want to have a hand in their health. There is sort of this notion where just do what your doctor says, don't ask questions. They tell you to do something, you do it, you leave, you grab your script, and you go on about your life. But here we want people to ask questions. We want people to be self-aware. We want people to have a good relationship with their program because that's where a lot of people it can get a little rocky. And so we're always having to course correct. And so a huge part of that is that education. I think that was a big piece that I have talked about with you during your visits is that, you know, the food you eat is either your medicine or it's your poison. Because regardless of who you are, what gender you are, where you live, what your religion or your cultural background is, the one thing that everybody does is eat. And
Mhm.
so the food that you eat is either going to restore the function of your body or it's going to deplete its performance. There's no and or, it just is.
Yeah, and I feel like it's no doubt that we definitely see this in cultures over the year, like looking at ancient Chinese culture, like many Chinese residents are like close to 100 or 100 years old, whereas the average death rate in the US is still closer to 80. I believe it's like 78.6 right now.
Yeah,
So it's clear that the foods that different cultures are eating are having a direct outcome on their health.
right. No, it's huge. It makes a huge difference. That's why I think everybody should come to our Nutrition 101 class.
Yes.
But honestly, it's so true. I mean, it's your cells interact with everything you consume. So it's funny when people are like, well, I only had a sip of vodka. But as you hear me tell people, it takes this much poison to kill somebody. So your body's still
Yes.
interacting with it.
Exactly. And I feel like, it's just our culture in the US because we're so individualized to constantly feel like I feel like a lot of people use food as more of a pleasure thing rather than a health thing. And
Yep.
so many people are like, convinced in their mind of just being justifying like eating badly or eating junk, really, because it's not even food, by saying like, "Oh, I deserve this," I deserve this. I'm gonna treat myself.
Mhm.
When in reality, you think you're treating your mind, but you're hurting your body, which in turn hurts your mind.
Exactly. It's like a catch 22. It's just a cycle.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited for you. I'm so excited for your journey and I'm excited for your future here at Aspire. You've been such a huge answer to prayer for both my mom and I, and we get along so well. All we do is laugh and I feel like you're just a great fit.
Yes, I know. I've been having so much fun like working with you and your mom and working on the store and stuff like that and just kind of like seeing what you guys have to offer because I feel like it's so important that we have, more holistic that is reachable and affordable, especially in our community,
Yep.
because that is also a big issue with modern medicine is just how outrageously priced it is and how health insurance is just an absolute gamble and a scam in this country.
Yeah, it is because it's really just sick insurance. If you get
Yes.
sick, you can use it sometimes,
Yes.
if you're lucky. But you also have to pay a huge deductible. We won't get into that. That's a different conversation. But yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely right. Is there any last, I don't know, bits of inspiration you want to share with our audience?
I feel like a lot of people are hesitant to start on their journeys just because I feel like they may feel overwhelmed in the beginning. But I feel like it's super important that, we also educate people that like we do meet you where you're at Aspire. We're not trying to have you t totally flip your life and do a 180 overnight. That's not what this is about. Everybody's healing journey is different. Everybody's going to adapt these habits differently, but like these habits begin over time. And I feel like that's really important because a lot of people will be hesitant to start because they don't think that they'll be able to commit to the whole thing. But I was like, it's a lot easier when you just take it step by step. And that's kind of like what we like to do at Aspire and just take it step by step with the client, meet them where they're at, and try to set new goals each week that are attainable and that make them feel good also and motivated to do better when they're achieving those small goals so that they can reach their long-term goals.
Yeah, exactly. Meet you where you're at, get you what you want, and educate you as to what you need.
Yes.
That's all we do. Well, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful conversation, and thank you for being a part of the healing revolution.
Thank you for having me. It was such a pleasure.